Hello, this is Paula Phinn, Primary Assistant Principal, and I'm going to talk you through the primary report. This video is relevant for any parents of children in years 1 to 6, and please note that there is a separate video for parents of children in the foundation stage. So if your child is in year 1 to 6, the first report that you'll probably want to look at is the child's pupil subject development report. Now you'll see that there are two PDFs in your child's folder on GEMS Connect. So there is a report for reading, writing and mathematics, and then there's a separate PDF for science. It's just that the programme that we pull this from pulls the reports separately is the reason for that. So you'll see that this is a year 1 report. Your child's class and your child's name will be on the report as well. And then if you look at reading, you'll see that all of the objectives for your child's year group are on this page. For writing, all of the objectives are on this page. And for mathematics, for year 1, the mathematics objectives, there are quite a lot, so they span over 2 pages. And for different year groups, there might be writing objectives go over 2 pages, etc. So just have a look at that. So I'm just going to explain to you what the colours mean. We'll go to this page because we have all of the colour options available. So if your child has any objectives which have been graded as purple, that means that they are working at greater depth. So this probably means that they are using higher order thinking skills to solve problems, and that they're applying their learning in lots of different ways. For this objective that I'm looking at, this is for year 1, is obviously about pencil control, holding the pencil correctly, sitting comfortably at the table. That means that this child is doing this across the entire curriculum, so even in maths and subjects that are not sort of solely assessing writing. If you've got objectives which are green, that means that they've been taught by the class teacher and that your child has secured those objectives, so they've showed good understanding there. Any objectives that are orange, that means that the class teacher has taught those, but your child is still working towards securing those objectives. So it might be that they're showing some independence, that they can do it sort of by themselves, but they might have to come back to an adult to sort of get further instructions or examples of how to do it. And then we've got objectives which are red. The red objectives are the objectives that have been taught, but they're not yet understood by the child. And there could be various reasons for this. So it might be that this objective has only started to be taught very recently, so there's just not been enough time for the children to understand it yet. Or it might be that your child sort of struggles with that objective and might need a bit more support. When you have your ACE conference appointment with the class teacher, you'll be able to discuss that just to check which applies for your child. And then we've got objectives in grey which have not yet been taught just because of where we are in the year. You'll find that in mathematics there are more of these grey objectives. This is because in maths we teach in blocks or units, and the same would apply for science. So for example, in science we might do a block on living things, and then the teachers can very clearly assess those objectives. We then might move on to something completely different like materials. Again, the teachers are then able to assess those objectives very well at the end of that topic. In mathematics, it's quite similar. So we might do a topic on place value. We then might do addition and subtraction. It might follow on that we do shape or time or fractions or money or any of these things. But we teach the objectives in blocks. So you might see that the teachers are able to assess more of the objectives at this point in the year as green or purple, and that there are more objectives that are still to be covered, just because when this report was pulled, we were only 2/3 of the way through the academic year. So I can see that this class is still to cover time, which will be covered in term 3, and 3D shapes there. In reading and writing, you will find that there are less grey objectives. The reason for this is that we don't teach in blocks in reading and writing. You'll find that the teachers teach most of the objectives right from the beginning of the year, right through to term 3 until the end of the year. What we're doing there is sort of building up skills over time, and the children constantly using these skills and up-levelling their work and sort of developing a greater understanding as the year goes on. And it's the same for reading. Again, you can discuss this with your child's teacher when it comes to the ACE conference. So we've then got what we call the cover page, which will give you a sort of snapshot or a summary about what all of this means. So we've got child's name, class and teacher, we've got attendance here, and then you can see according to the KHDA framework where your child's attendance would be judged. So this child's attendance would be judged as outstanding, which is great, and they've had 0 lates. And then we've got all of our core subjects: reading, writing, maths, science, Arabic, Islamic and UAE social studies. You'll see this child does not have a grade for Islamic because this child does not attend Islamic lessons. We then have an end of year predicted attainment grade. Down at the bottom, this explains what each of these grades mean. So if your child has E for entering, or E+, or DV for developing, or DV+, that means that we predict that they will not be working at the curriculum standard by the end of the year, that they will still be working towards it. If your child has any of these codes in the end of year prediction, you can speak to the child's teacher about that to find out what you can do both from school side and at home, what you can do to try to plug those gaps before the end of the year. If your child is assessed, with one of these, it doesn't mean that they won't move up to the next year group. It just means that the teacher who has that child the next year would be aware of that, and they would also be trying to plug those gaps. If your child is graded S, which this child is for Arabic, that means that they are working at the curriculum standard, or predicted to be working at the curriculum standard at the end of that year group. If they are graded as S+ or M, it means that we think they are going to be working at greater depth, and we're seeing lots of signs of this throughout the rest of the year. So S+, meaning that through our sort of ongoing daily assessment of the children's work and lessons on Seesaw, etc., that we feel between that and the external assessments that we've been doing throughout the year, that we feel that your child is showing that they're working above the curriculum standard, that they're working at greater depth. If your child is down as M, it means that, going back to this report, we are predicting that there will be quite a few of the objectives that are graded as purple by the end of the year. The final report that you will want to look at is the CAT4 report. CAT just stands for Cognitive Ability Test. This report will be available for all students from year 2 to 6. So if your child's in year 1, you will not receive this report. The cognitive ability test sort of tests children on 4 main areas. So verbal reasoning, which is the ability to solve problems that are sort of based on language. So it might have been written language or something that they have to listen to. Again, that language would be in English. So for any children who are learning English as an additional language or developing those English skills, you might see that this is a bit lower just because it's been assessed in English. Then we would have non-verbal reasoning, so it might be very similar types of problems as verbal reasoning, but they take out all of that language, so they might be assessing this using pictures and diagrams and those types of things. Then we've got spatial reasoning, so that's the ability to be able to think, for example, in 3 dimensions. So examples that I've seen of this is maybe showing a child a 3D shape, a sort of on the screen, and then being able to tell you what that would look like from a different angle, or from looking at it on a bird's eye view or something. It's sort of thinking outside the box, and a lot of those skills would tie into our STEM learning. We would then have quantitative reasoning, which is the ability to solve problems and sort of reason with numeracy and with numbers. It might start from, include very simple things like place value, etc., and it might become more difficult than that as well. So your child will be, the naming form will be here, the name in the class. Your child will be given a score for each of these from the CAT4 test itself. So you'll see that the average score is 100. SAS just stands for standard age score. So 103 would be slightly above average, but still within that average bracket. 110 would be above average. 97 would be below average, but again, it's only slightly out, so it would still fall within that average bracket. and then 88 is below average. And then overall, if you take all of these into account, the mean score for this child is spot on 100. If your child has one score which is lower than the rest, it just means that your child might find learning in that area a bit more difficult. So for example, this one that's spatial, it might be that if a child was working on that kind of problem or that kind of learning in school, that the teacher might want to give some extra verbal instructions. They might be written or to listen to help that child to solve problems with that kind of learning. This really helps the teachers. It informs their planning and things. It's really useful to us. There's some additional information here about the Cat4, so please note that that will be available from years 2 to 6. I hope that you found this video useful in explaining the reports. You will have an opportunity to discuss your child's learning with your child's class teacher during the ACE conference next week.